July has officially come to an end, and I've added another 10 titles to my goal of beating 100 video games for the 4th consecutive year. Here are my final thoughts on every game I beat in July of 2023 and their rankings based on how happy they made me. So, I think that this game has a lot of interesting facets to it, just like the first one did. The story is very unique and very interesting. The characters are well written and well voiced. The art direction is gorgeous. There are some heartstring moments that are pretty poignant. A lot of similar stuff to the first one. If you like that kind of narrative branching kind of game where you get to make different dialogue decisions and that affects the ending, like that kind of a game, then you will probably like this. However, I do think that I do have one core critique, and that is that I think that there were some problems with the first game. One in particular that was not fixed with this game. I don't think it got any better. And that is that when you're making these dialogue choices, it's hard to feel like you have a sense of agency because you don't know what's at stake, and you don't know where everything's going. You don't know. It's hard to see even the repercussions of your decisions for the most part. A lot of the decisions seemed arbitrary, how you are going to talk to a certain person. Just like the first game, I would pick a dialogue option, meaning it to sound genuine, and it would come out sarcastic. And it's like, nope, I didn't want that. But more often, it's just that, like, okay, I'm gonna tell this person not to do a certain thing, and their life is going to hinge on that, whether you told them correctly or not. But what you told them doesn't have any ethical weight behind it. It's not correct, or it's not morally right or wrong. It's just like, oh, you should tell them to do this thing, and then that person would die or not die or whatever because of that. If I'm playing a game like As Dusk Falls, and I come up with there's a choice, it's got a lot. Most of the decisions in that game had a lot of moral weight behind them. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to leave this person in this spot unattended, or I'm going to take them with me even though it's dangerous. It's like, okay, I understand how that could be good or bad either way. I need to make a choice. Whereas it's like, oh, you can have the sarcastic response to this person, or you can have the dismissive response. It's like, okay, well, neither of those sound great. Or you can tell this person to drive to this place, or you could tell them not to, and it's like, what? Where's the ethical issue? Why would that have any effect? It's what is one of those things morally correct? No, it's arbitrary. So I think that because of that, because I don't feel the weight of my decisions, and because I don't feel like there's much, I don't know what's at stake, it's hard to feel guilty when something bad happens. It's like, okay, well, I rolled the dice and I got snake eyes, I guess. How do you feel bad about that? I'm not guilty. It's not like, oh man, I should have rolled higher. It's like, well, that's just the way it worked out. I just got unlucky. That's kind of how I feel like with now in my particular case, it goes a little bit farther than that because I skipped some of the side content, and that probably could have resulted in a better outcome. And there was more side content in this game, and that's probably good. I don't do that stuff, but aside from all that, still just the decisions that I made, it's just, I don't know, they just didn't feel like they had a lot of weight. Now, I still think that this game is objectively good. I still think that it's worth playing for all of the reasons that I listed at the beginning with what is good about this game. I just wouldn't go into expecting to feel the stakes like you would with Detroit Become Human or As Dusk Falls or a Dark Pictures game, something like that. I think those games are better at that. And they're scarier, some of them. But still good game, still enjoyed it, still fine. The real question is going to be whether I liked it more than the first one or not. I'll have to think about that. I'm not sure. I think this game has done the best job of any of the three of helping me to understand how I feel about this series in general. And how I feel about the series in general is this. The story, the art direction, the direction in general, the writing, the voice acting is all mwah, chef's kiss, awesome, amazing. This game is never better than when you're 15 minutes deep into a 20-minute, 30-minute cutscene explaining some bonkers-ass shit that Kojima has dreamed up that is both incredibly insane and also incredibly prophetic. He is the best at that. And for that reason alone, these games have an immense amount of value and are incredibly just awesome in that way. But anytime I actually have to physically play the game, I'm frustrated as hell, and I don't have that much fun. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that I'm just not very good at these games. I'm not bad at stealth games. I'm bad at these stealth games. I just don't have the patience, and I don't have the ability to play this game without getting really frustrated. To play any game in the series so far without getting frustrated. We'll see how the later ones pan out. I'll be playing those soon. So, when it comes to ranking a game like this, when I'm thinking about how happy they make me, I have to weigh how happy I am with the story and the cutscenes and the characters and the writing and the voice acting against all the frustrations of just playing the game. The reason that the negatives outweigh the positives is because I don't play video games for all that stuff that Kojima's really good at. I play them mostly for gameplay. The actual game part. The interactive part. And I don't like that. And I think a big part of it is just because it's a me problem. But I also think that the control schemes in this game, even for the times, are convoluted and not that good. I don't think the control scheme is very good. I think that is my only objective complaint that I think brings the value of the series down, is that I just don't think the control scheme's very good. It's not intuitive. Good on him and them and Konami and Kojima and all the people involved at swinging for the fences. You can accuse Kojima of all kinds of shit, but you cannot accuse him of not going hard. And he does that not only in the story, but with the control scheme. He is not afraid to just do his own fucking thing. And there are moments that pays off, but I think largely, I think for me, the quality of the game suffers because the controls are just so whack. The only real question. So in other words, no, I'm not a big fan of this series. I'm just not. And again, I recognize that a lot of that has to do with my own shortcomings and my own flaws as a gamer. Not all of it, but a lot of it. The only real question that is left to be answered is how do I feel about it in comparison with the other games? And that's a lot more difficult to answer because I've struggled with all of them, but there have been parts about all of them that I have really, really enjoyed. I think I can say with some confidence that 2 so far is my favorite, just because of all the bonkers shit at the end of 2. That I think was the coolest Metal Gear moment so far, was all that stuff at the end of 2. I don't think anything in this game is as good as that. I don't know if I like it more than 1, which tells me I didn't like it a lot more and I didn't like it a lot less. It's close to how much I liked 1. And which was, again, I've already explained that, the things that I've liked and didn't like. So I'll have to think about that. But I know that I don't think I liked it as much as 2. The boss, probably my favorite part gameplay-wise, was some of the boss fights were pretty cool. I was particularly interested in some of the later boss fights that I thought were really, really pretty solid. I won't go into details because I try to avoid that on these for spoiler purposes, even though I know this game's 20 years old, whatever. Anyway, even though it's not the series isn't exactly for me, I really do appreciate what Kojima is doing with this, and I do not fault anyone. I have no judgment for anyone that thinks that the series is the best series of all time. I absolutely can appreciate and see that viewpoint. I just don't personally agree with it based on my own preferences. This game was definitely good. It was definitely worth playing. It's definitely more Silent Hill, and Silent Hill is fun. I thought that the weapon variety was better. I enjoyed that quite a bit. I thought that some of the set pieces were some of the best in the series, like the haunted mansion and the amusement park, and I guess those two mainly. The church I thought was cool. And I liked the character. I was more sympathetic to that character than I think the first two. And I don't think this game suffered from the issue that I had with 2, where I just hated every character in the game. Even some of the bad characters I at least thought were interesting. And I really liked Heather. I really liked the protagonist. So I think there's a lot to offer with this entry, and that if you're a Silent Hill fan, it's a must. That if you're a Silent Hill fan, it's definitely worth playing. I do have some problems. One of my favorite parts about Silent Hill 1 was that I could explore the city pretty freely, and they pared that down quite a bit in 2, and in 3 it doesn't exist really. So, I like that part of the game, and it just doesn't really exist in Silent Hill 3, and that's okay. That's like obviously a narrative choice and whatever, but I liked being able to explore the city, so I don't love that. I also thought the bosses were better in 3 than 2. The bosses I think were on par with 1, maybe not quite as good as 1, but I thought that was an improvement on 2 as well. I do have some issues with this game. The story was cool. I didn't have a problem with the story. I thought the story was maybe the best of the 3. But I do have a big problem with the way that this game approaches how it can kill you. Because I died 14 times in this game. And exactly one of those deaths was because I actually just got hit enough that I ran out of health. Every other time that I died, it was because of some insta-kill scenario, most of which you can't see coming. And, if that happens in, some newer game, it's like, oh, they got me, whatever. You respawn at the nearest checkpoint and you lose 2, 3, 5, maybe 10 minutes of progress. But in a game like this, where you got to go back to wherever the last time you saved was, and it can just insta-kill you without warning, and some places in very specific points that game knows you haven't saved in a while, 30 minutes or more, and you're going to lose all that progress because of some insta-kill that the only way to know that it's there is to experience it once. That is dog shit. I hated that. I lost so much progress in this game because, you just didn't know that I'm trying not to spoil anything, but you didn't know that the thing was going to come down that road. When you walk down that, now you know, you can't go that way, I guess. I hated that. I hated it. And it was so frustrating that it was the lowest point of the trilogy for me. That was the most I hated Silent Hill, was during those times. More than anything that ever happened in 1 or 2. I didn't... see, 6 hours and 15 minutes, it says it took me to beat this game. It took me twice that. That's how much time I wasted because of those deaths. Split worm kill time, missionary kill time. That's interesting. So I hated that. I hated it. And, you know, I think the other issue that I have with this game is the same issue that I had with 2, just bigger, is that as this trilogy wears on, like it happens with every popular franchise that has sequels, the novelty and the mystique of the series just kind of starts to wear off. So, like, for me, nothing tops the first Silent Hill. Not yet, anyway. The first Silent Hill is by far the scariest, and it's by far the most interesting, engrossing, and immersive. Even though I think maybe the story is the worst of the 3, I still think the first is the best because it's scariest and it's the most fun to explore. You know, at my lowest point, I was thinking that, oh, look, we got all this stuff here. At my lowest point, I was thinking that this might be my least favorite of the series because I was so frustrated. I actually threw my headset at one point. But now that I'm able to see the whole thing looking back, and, you know, the end being pretty satisfying and a lot of the other parts being pretty satisfying, I'm not sure that I feel that way. I still am pretty confident in thinking that I think 1 is my favorite. But I do think this game does several things the best. I think the story is the best. I think some of the set pieces are the best. I thought some of the bosses were pretty good. Maybe the best. I don't know. I'll have to think about that, because Silent Hill 1 bosses were pretty decent too. And I think the protagonist was the best. The characters I liked the best. I think maybe the writing was probably the best. So I'm one of those people that likes 1 more than 2. Apparently a lot of people like 2 the best of the original 3. So I don't think I like this one as much as 1. I'm gonna have to do some thinking as to whether I think I like this one better than 2 or not. It's gonna be close. But there's a lot to like. You know, honestly, a lot of the jank, a lot of the problems I have with it are just products of the era. So you know, I don't want to hold that against the game too much, but at the end of the day, it's just, I rank it based on how much I enjoyed it, and those parts where I lost long parts of progress fucking sucked, man. It really ruined those parts of the games for me. I mean, I was talking about the amusement park and the mansion, the haunted mansion. Those were some of the coolest parts of the game, and they were kind of shit on because that was the time that I was struggling the most with insta-kills. The most insta-kills are there, and there's so stupid ways for you to die. Just real dumb, real objectively bad, in my opinion, to allow someone to just die because you don't have any way of knowing what to do or what not to do until you do it or don't do it, and then you just die. There's this one part where if you don't walk out of a room fast enough, you just die. And all the video game logic I've ever been taught tells me, stay in that room, exhaust that dialogue, exhaust all of the options in that room, or you're gonna miss something. And so you stay in the room, and then it just kills you. And you lose. I lost a lot of progress there. Sucks. So, you know, the fact that it took me twice as long as this clear time says it took me to beat the game, that's a lot of wasted time. The how long to beat time says 6 hours on this game, which, you know, if you're looking at clear time, that's about right, but that's bullshit. It takes longer than that. And I didn't die that much. I only died 14 times. That's not that much. That might be I don't know how much I died in the other games, but anyway, very frustrating at times, but I did enjoy it. You know, I think that this game is better than the other PSP God of War game, Chains of Sparta or Chains of Olympus, because that game had a few frustrating parts about it, and it just didn't have that much interesting going on with the story. It just didn't really grab me. I think this one is better because it's a little bit more linear than any of the other God of War games, but that doesn't really bother me. It's very intuitively designed, like it's very obvious to see where to go next, and I didn't like end up having there's a bunch of, in a lot of God of War games, there's a lot of like really frustrating parts, at least for me, that I like hated getting through. This game didn't have any of those. And I thought the story was better. I thought that the whole backstory part with his family and everything was a lot more interesting than Chains of Olympus. That's the easiest game to compare this to because it's the only other PSP God of War game. I think that actually I might rank this above some of, or at least one of the mainline God of War PS2 games, because it just didn't have as much frustrating shit in it. But at the end of the day, it's still not as good to me as something like the original God of War or God of War 3, because it just doesn't have the depth, the substance that those games did. It's not long enough to. You get the games that are longer, like God of War 1 and 2 and 3, and you get a lot more depth as far as like upgrades and types of weapons you can use and different kinds of combos, and there's a lot more room to add that stuff in. A 6-hour game, you don't have time to introduce the player to all those different mechanics. You just don't have time. So I think this game did a good job of introducing me to as much as it could. It actually had some pretty cool mechanics, like the flame weapon augmentation mechanic was unique, totally unique, and really fun and really interesting. So I think it did a good job of introducing as much as it reasonably could without being overwhelming for a 6-hour game. Ultimately it's still not as good as most of the mainline God of War games, just because it just doesn't have that mainline feel to it, but it's still good, man. It answers some interesting questions about his past, and I really enjoyed the way that they changed up the formula. This game is like, this is the only game that several things are true, like having flame augmentation or augmentation on your weapon at all, not having a Rage of the Gods mechanic, stuff like that. They really changed it up for this game, and I think it worked. I think it worked pretty well. So yeah, no real complaints. The biggest complaint I can come up with is I don't think the boss fights were that good, because the game overall was pretty easy. This is the easiest God of War. It's not even close. Chains of Olympus is probably a distant second, but this is easily the easiest. I'd have to go back and look at my death totals, but I died 17 times playing this, and we can look real quick. I died. I died 67 times in the first one, 85 times in the second one, only 8 times in Chains of Olympus, actually, so that one was pretty easy, too. I don't remember that one being that easy. This one felt easier. And so the boss fights didn't really have an opportunity to really challenge me, which I enjoy. So that's my biggest nitpick, is that it was maybe a little easy, but that's not a major problem for me as someone that's trying to get through games quickly, especially knowing that I'm trying to get through these so that I can play the newer ones. That's the real icing on the cake for me, is trying to get to the reboot games. But I still enjoyed this game. I still thought it was good. If you like the original God of War games, you'll like this one. It's more of that. So you'll enjoy it for that, and I did too. I very much enjoyed this game, as I have all of the Watch Dogs games. I think I'm a bigger supporter of them than most people seem to be. I know the first one got a lot of flack because of the graphical downgrades from the trailers and yada yada, but that game was pretty fun. Oh, and people didn't like the protagonist or whatever. They thought he was like boring or something. I thought it was fine. The second one, I don't remember which one I ranked higher, but I do remember that they were very close. I've liked, and this one's no different. I liked this one about as much as the other ones. It really, so yeah, Watch Dogs is 187, Watch Dogs 2 is 212. So I've got Watch Dogs a little bit over Watch Dogs 2. That feels about right, because I like the story in Watch Dogs 1 more. And the hacking, it was more of a balanced challenge, I feel like, than the first one. The second one was kind of all over the place challenge-wise. There were a lot of difficulty spikes and then parts that were way too easy. This one kind of had that too. But I think this story is the best. So I think there are some things that they did right with this game. The story is the best of the 3 games. By far, probably. The addition of the mechanic where you can just recruit anybody, that is genius. I'm actually surprised it hasn't been done before or since. That is a really smart way to almost like ludify different protagonists. Like if you can find ones like, oh, this guy's got a lot of really good properties, I want to recruit him, and then you have to do a side mission to get him. That's really smart. That's really, really smart. And you know, I only did it a couple of times, but it was fun. It was fun to do that, and it made sense. And looking for people that you might want for different reasons made sense. That was really fun. I really enjoyed that. The graphics were better, but that's to be expected. And you know, I think some of the combat, or not the combat, but the combat mechanics were better. Of course, Watch Dogs isn't really a combat game that much. There's always been combat, but I feel like this one had a bigger emphasis on combat. Like there were some times that you just have to shoot your way out of stuff. You can't stealth out. And that I didn't like as much, because it's kind of counter to the way the game wants you to build your characters, you know? So I didn't love that. And there were a couple of parts of the game that were really frustrating, because suddenly it's like, oh, you just have to shoot your way out of this situation. And you've never had to do that before, and all you know is stealth, and all you've put points into is stealth, and now you need to kill like 14 drones and 8 people. And I thought that those difficulty spikes were jarring and off-putting. But all in all, I enjoyed the game immensely. I thought all the hacking stuff in this game there's a lot of stealth games and there's some hacking games, but this game does, I think, the best job of marrying combat, stealth, and tech stuff. Better than Cyberpunk 2077, better than other games like that. I'm not saying this has combat that's as good as Cyberpunk. It doesn't, but I think it does the best job of being a good balance of the 3. It's really just going to come down to whether I think I liked it more than the others. And I don't know the answer to that, but it's going to be close. It's going to be close. So you know, it's not going to be a top 50 game or anything, but I did really enjoy it, even though I didn't play a single. Well, I think I played one side mission. I just played through the main story. I had a great time with it. I'm a pretty big fan of the Ubisoft open world formula. I'm one of the people that likes that. I'm one of those weirdos. So I like this, and this is kind of a more of that, you know. So it's good. It's good. I really did enjoy it. Good job, Ubisoft, making another good open world game. I'm pleased with it. It's definitely got, like, some Ubisoft open world games, like, they're really generic, and I still even like those, but this one's really not. It's got its own thing going on, and so I really enjoyed it. It was fun. This game is great. I mean, it's great, especially, like, considering when it came out. It plays very well, even by today's standards. It holds up very well. The first one did too, but this one holds up even better because some of the traversals improved, some of the combat's a little bit tighter, the ledge climbing is a lot cleaner. It's not perfect. Actually, it drove me nuts a few times. Some of the ledge climbing and traversal is still a little jacked, but it was better than the first game. And I did get really frustrated. With the game a few times because it was significantly harder than the first one. I played both of them on normal, and this one kicked my ass a few times. It was tough. It was almost controller throwing tough a few times. I was definitely beating my head against a brick wall a few times so it was hard for me. But I like that once I can get through it. I may not like it in the moment, so that's not a negative. That's probably a plus. The story was better, I think, than the first one. I think the story was better. I think the characters were more interesting, more memorable. I think that it's all overall just a really, really good, very polished game, especially, again, for when it came out. The only complaints are the traversal and ledge climbing is still a little jank in some places, to the point that it's frustrating. And there are, I guess, what I would call difficulty spikes in some areas, especially toward the end, where it gets real hard. It's like you're in one map, and but is that even really a complaint? Nah, it wasn't really a spike. It just got gradually harder. So that's fine. I can't really think of anything else that's like, the only thing that's going to keep it out of the top 100 or like a really high ranked game is that it's a pretty simple experience, I suppose. The story's really great and the characters are really great, but it's a lot of combat puzzles, and there's really nothing wrong with that. I really don't. I'm stretching even to come up with a complaint. It's fine. It's a really good game. I'm curious to see how 3 will continue the formula. So I really liked it. I've played 4. It's one of the few games that I played out of order before I started doing this. I played Uncharted 4 a long time ago, back when it was newer. And that game, I can't help but hold it to that standard a little bit. And that game is like way next level. Like the quality of life and polish is all so good in that game, and the story is so great, and it ends so well, and it really starts well too. All the characters are so awesome. So it's not that level, but honestly, if I hadn't had that game to compare it to, which I shouldn't really, I should have played these games in order, then I wouldn't even see that. So that's not really fair to hold that against the game. But yeah, I mean, for when this game came out, this got to be one of the best games of 2009, right? It's got to be. So good job, Naughty Dog. And I'm looking forward to playing 3. As a game that fits very clearly within my favorite genre, that being Souls-likes, I knew that I was going to enjoy this game. I've never really played a Souls-like that I didn't enjoy. But it did some things that were a little different. The story is very interesting. I really liked the protagonist. Usually, the protagonist in Souls-likes is a nameless or personality void person that doesn't matter. The protagonist in this game is excellent. I thought the story was really cool, especially as it went on. The story got cooler and cooler. The art design and the enemy design and the level design, all that stuff was very good. And the combat was about standard for a Souls-like. I did have a couple of issues. It was too easy. I know I died 27 times, but I died 750 times in Elden Ring. I died 400 and something times in Sekiro. This wasn't a terribly long Souls-like, but it wasn't a super short one either. Like, most of the bosses I killed either on my first attempt or after one death. And I really like the challenge in a Souls-like, and so I didn't really feel challenged. I was able to rush through the second half of the game without really upgrading much at all, and still have no problem. I mean, I killed the final boss on my first attempt. And I didn't really love... So it was too easy. I didn't really love the... I didn't really love that the weapon that I was given at the beginning of the game is the weapon I kept for the entire game. I never found anything better. That was disappointing. So the weapon variety, although there was some, there was no incentive to use it, and so that left something to be desired. And then the last thing is that it was pretty buggy. There were a lot of times when dialogue just wouldn't play, and I had to read it, or I would miss it if I wasn't paying attention. And there were the way that the environment works with platforming is like the collision with like the platforms and stuff is super weird. You would make jumps that you shouldn't have made. You would miss jumps that you shouldn't have missed. I was able to get a bunch of items through, I think, glitch exploits. I'm not sure. Maybe it certainly didn't look like the game was designed to be played that way. I would walk through walls, walk on walls that had no flat surface, that kind of stuff. So there were a lot of bugs. Wasn't a huge deal, but the platforming was bothersome because of that. But so those are mostly nitpicks. When I think about where I'm going to rank a game like this, like it's not at bottom tier, but it's not top tier. It's not bottom tier when it comes to Souls-likes, and it's not top tier when it comes to Souls-likes. So it's not Sekiro or Elden Ring, but it's also not Dolmen or The Surge. Not that those are bad games, but those are on the lower end of the Souls-likes that I've played. I put it more like, something like Thymesia, which I really enjoyed, or The Surge 2, or Asterigos, something like that. But yeah, good. I'd say if I was making like an A through F tier, or a S through F tier, I'd probably solid B plus. If you like Souls-likes, absolutely worth playing. Absolute, just for the level design and the combat alone, it's worth it. It's worth playing for sure. It just had some issues, It's definitely the best game I've ever played by Spiders. Of course, the only other game I've played by Spiders was Bound by Flame, which I hated. So good job, Spiders, for making a good game. I really, really loved playing this game. It is a very easy game to play. The controls are great. The combat was fun. The weapons were cool. The enemies were cool. The story was fun. There aren't really any major issues that I have with this. Technically, it was very sound. There aren't really any major issues I have with this game. However, I don't think it's a perfect game. When I play something like this, I can't help but compare it to Uncharted, because that's obviously what it's inspired by, as well as the older Tomb Raider games. But somebody went into the boardroom and pitched Tomb Raider, but more Uncharted-like, right? That's what this is. And that vision was executed very, very well. But it doesn't have the level of storytelling that Naughty Dog is able to deliver. The characters aren't as compelling. They're not as well voiced. The story isn't as compelling. It's not as interesting. It's a little bit more paint by the numbers, kind of standard Indiana Jones stuff. Whereas Uncharted really takes that to the next level and makes it really more about the characters than anything else. Where this is, I don't know, this is more about the mystique of, these like Holy Grail type items and these immortal characters and yada yada yada. So it doesn't quite match up when it comes to the story to something like Uncharted, the story and the characters and just the technical proficiency of the game. But that's a very high bar to meet, and even though that may be true, it's still an excellent game. I think I'm gonna, and I will say this: I've played Uncharted 1, and I think this is better than Uncharted 1, simply because of the quality of life stuff and just the technical advancements that come along with being an 8th generation game instead of a 7th generation game. So it'll probably rank higher than the first Uncharted game, but it's not going to rank as high as Uncharted 4. Now is it going to rank as high as the original Tomb Raider reboot, the 2013? I don't know. It's going to be very close. But I think that I probably sounds like I'm shitting on the voice work and the characters, and they're fine. There's nothing really wrong with them. They're good. They're just not like next level. The characters are pretty standard, what you would expect, basic type characters. The evil guys are evil for the reasons that they are, and they did a good job of trying to make it like more ethically murky, but the way the story comes together is it's still kind of Indiana Jones Dial of Destiny kind of shit. I actually haven't seen that movie, but I assume Crystal Skull, whatever, insert Indiana Jones relic here. But it was good. I really did enjoy it, and it was a fun time for a couple of days. And I realize now though why I forgot about the Tomb Raider reboot so quickly after I played it, because as fun as it is in the moment, it's not really that memorable. One thing I did want to add too that I did really like about the game is I like that it takes that Uncharted formula and it does tweak it a little bit by making some of the areas more open world-ish and sandbox-ish, and adding some side content and like optional stuff. I enjoyed doing that for a couple hours at the beginning of the game before I, eventually stop doing that stuff like I do, but I do appreciate that tweak to the formula because I think it works really well. So again, overall, great time. Very much looking forward to Shadow of the Tomb Raider. Awesome job. Very good. I'm also curious to see, now that I believe this franchise has changed hands a couple of times, I hear whispers that there's another one coming, so we'll see, if we hear more about that soon. Is this the best video game trilogy I've ever played? I'll have to think about it, but if not, it's gotta be pretty damn close. Let me think. I liked the first game, but I didn't love it. I loved the second game. Loved it. I loved this game too. It was really more of the same, and with some added extra stuff, and I loved it. Did I love it as much as 2? I don't think so. I don't think quite I loved it. The 2 was like a perfect video game. It was perfect. The way it was structured, the way all the characters came in and out at the right times, the way that it all culminated in the ending that it did, it was perfect. I don't know if I can say that for this game. The ending was pretty satisfying, but it wasn't perfect. It was muddy. So I didn't like the ending as much, although I thought it could have been a lot worse. Ending a trilogy like this in a satisfying way is a tall order. So I think they did okay, but I don't think I liked it quite as much as the first. That being said, or as much as the second game. That being said, it is a masterpiece of a trilogy. It really is, especially the second and the third game. It is it is maybe the best trilogy I have ever played. I'll have to think about that, but it might be. And it is almost certainly the most emotionally invested I've been in characters in a video game. I can't think of anything that would even be close. So it's a masterpiece of a trilogy. It really is. The story is, I mean, nothing even really touches it, video game wise. I mean, or nothing's better for sure. And I can't think of a world that's better. You know, something like the Horizon series comes to mind as like a pretty awesome world, but it just doesn't have the depth of this. So, I mean, I am a Mass Effect fan. So, I mean, I really don't have any notes for this game. It blew me away. It really did. The series, especially this 2 and 3 especially, just blew me away. And so, you know, I don't really have any major criticisms. I think that I liked the structure of the second game better. The mission structure. That was nice and clean. This was a little bit more confusing at times as far as like what I really needed to do and what I could do. And, you know, I liked the mission structure of the second game a little bit better, and I thought the ending was a little bit better. But I thought the way that this missions and stuff were carried out in this game was pretty great, and I thought the ending was pretty good. I'll have to think about the ending. But I thought it was pretty good. I'm satisfied with the ending that I got. I saved a lot of characters. There were some that died, but I saved a lot of characters. I feel good about the playthrough. Man, what an incredible experience. I'll never forget this. It's a great series of games. I absolutely adored playing through this game. I loved it from start to finish, but to be fair, this is like exactly my kind of game. This is like my favorite genre. Like this and Souls-likes are like neck and neck tied for like my favorite gaming experiences. I love loot shooters. I just love them. I love the loot grind. I love the combat. I love all the stats and all the numbers. It's exactly the kind of game I want to be playing most of the time. But even within that, even considering that, I think that there were some things that this game did particularly well. I thought the combat was excellent. The combat was so good. The loot grind was really, really good too. I thought I could feel how the different weapons changed the combat. The skills were awesome. I thought the skills were amazing. Really, really well done. The story was super freaking cool. I thought it was really great. The way, you know, you worry some of these live service games, they're not going to deliver on the story because they're holding stuff back for DLC or events or whatever, or later parts of the game, or you know, that's not the focus of the game in general. But I thought the story was great. The characters were really interesting. So I thought that there were some things that were particularly good about it. I do think there were a couple of issues. There were a couple of bugs that were really freaking annoying. Just marking junk in the loot inventory page was so buggy, it was almost untenable. Every time you marked something as junk, it would just randomly mark 3 other items in your inventory as junk. And if you didn't go back and unmark those individually, you just lose gear that you didn't want to lose. It was really, really, really annoying. I hated that. There were a couple of times that I think just one time that we actually had to restart because of bugs. Sometimes there was a couple of times that the HUD would just stop working. It wouldn't update ammo, map, weapon, skill cooldowns. It just would all freeze on the screen even though you could continue playing. So there were a couple of bugs, but that only happened a couple of times, and you know, I was really worried that the end wouldn't be satisfying because it was all building up to something so interesting. But I thought it was pretty satisfying. I thought it was good. The way that they handled it was good. The main antagonist or antagonists were kind of amorphous and not awesome. That was maybe left a little something to be desired in, as far as the story goes. But I mean, these are nitpicks. I thought the game looked awesome. It played awesome. It really makes me wonder why this game didn't get more attention. Because if you take this against something like Destiny, which is obviously its competition, from a standpoint of somebody, first of all, the campaign was way freaking better than any Destiny campaign. The Destiny campaigns are just, you know, icing on the little sprinkles on top of the cupcake. They don't have that much meat, really. And I played all the campaigns all the way through Forsaken. After that, I stopped. And they were okay, but none of them were as good as this. This campaign was great. It was clearly designed to be like a campaign that you could play through, and it took some time, too. A lot longer than any of the Destiny campaigns. And so I, you know, and as far as like, I don't know what the end game looks like. Maybe that's where the problem lies. That's maybe what, but I don't understand why more people aren't talking about this game. Nobody talks about this game anymore. It just disappeared. I don't know what the player base is like, or if it even exists anymore, but the campaign from a single player standpoint, loved it. And I would be, if I were the type that would play games after credits, I would definitely be interested in seeing what the end game for this game is like. Maybe that's where it falls short. I don't know, but the loot and the combat and the story and the characters and the skills, all that stuff was great. The skill trees were really cool too. I mean, the skill trees were all right, but they were there. So yeah, I loved it. I loved this game. I hope they make a sequel. I bet they don't, but I would really like to see one. That's it for the month of July, and it brings us to a total of 75 games beaten so far in 2023. Have you already beaten any of these games? And if so, did you feel differently about them than I did? Let me know about it in the comments, and be sure to subscribe for more gaming videos. Thanks for watching!